O'Neill. He's a geopolitical analyst. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV. Now, I'd like to get your opinion as far as this foreign support that terrorists have been getting throughout the situation in Syria. It's no secret. However, it's not something that is discussed when it comes to Aleppo, for example.
Well, it's been a feature of American foreign policy since at least the 1950s to support terrorist groups as part of their own geopolitical objectives. Afghanistan is perhaps the best known example, where the Americans with Saudi money and Pakistani facilities set up training camps for Al-Qaeda, which were then infiltrated into Afghanistan and into the Muslim-dominant republics of what was then the southern USSR. That was known as Operation Cyclone, and it's carried on in various forms ever since. And what we're seeing in Syria is simply a continuation of that policy process. The Saudis, the Qataris and the Americans have been the predominant suppliers and financiers of various terrorist groups in Syria, and with the objective of overthrowing the legitimate government of Bashar al-Assad.
Right now, Mr. O'Neill, right now, as we've discussed earlier as well, that Russia and the Syrian government have declared a unilateral ceasefire when it comes to Aleppo. The humanitarian agency is saying right now that their ambulances and their aid convoys are ready. However, it is the militants who are shelling those humanitarian corridors, which does not allow for the evacuation of the wounded or the delivery of aid. Now, that would make, when the U.S. speaks of a humanitarian catastrophe in Syria or the lives of civilians, wouldn't it make sense for them to call for a ceasefire, not just from Russia and Syria, but also from the militants it supports?
It would make sense from a humanitarian point of view. It doesn't make sense from an American geopolitical point of view. The calls for a ceasefire are really have happened in the past. There have been ceasefires, and they've used those ceasefires to regroup and rearm the terrorist groups. They have no intention, in my view, of seriously carrying out or achieving a peaceful resolution of the crisis in Aleppo. The calls for or the concerns expressed about alleged war crimes by Syria and Russian armed forces in Aleppo simply makes a mockery of what's really going on. And the Western media never talk about what the Americans did in Fallujah, for example, what is currently going on in Mosul, where there was intensive bombardment of civilian areas. And what is also not mentioned is that the Western Mosul was being left in effect open to allow the terrorists to flee out of Mosul and into Syria to join the other terrorist forces there. It's a nonsense to suggest that there's a serious interest in a ceasefire by the Western powers, who have no business being there anyway in the first place.
All right, that's geopolitical analyst James O'Neill joining us via Skype from Edinburgh. Mr. O'Neill, thank you very much indeed for your comments here.
We start with breaking news at 5. Air Tracker 7 over the scene of this school bus crash near 39th and Fox. This is in Denver. Police say 3 cars were involved in this crash, including the bus you're looking at right there. Right now, police say 5 students and the driver of one of those other cars were injured in this. Police believe those injuries are pretty minor, but we do want to let you know about this school bus crash right there in Denver. Also,
and shootings caught on camera, along with tensions between police and the public, are increasing as of late. Now, for the first time, Serena Vazan takes us behind the scenes of police training that could be the difference between life and death for both a suspect and an officer.
Ma'am, I see the gun. Don't reach for it. Ma'am, drop the gun! Drop the gun!
As he rolls her like that, you can clearly see that she suffered gunshot wounds to the chest.
Right.
A training ground for St. Pete police officers, veterans, and cadets.
All right, holster up. Now what do we need to do?
St. Pete Sergeant J.D. Lofton taking charge.
We're going hot.
Recreating real-life scenarios, walking us through the 3 most common and dangerous confrontations, weapons simulating real guns and bullets. From a traffic stop.
Hi, ma'am. I stopped you for running the red light back there. Ma'am, can you stop reaching? Can you put your hands on the steering wheel there for me?
Going horribly wrong.
Ma'am, I see the gun. Don't. Ma'am, drop the gun. Drop the gun.
To a report of a suspicious person in a park.
Ma'am? Can we talk to you, ma'am? Gun! Get down!
Get in the fight! Get in the fight!
And trying to calm an emotionally disturbed person.
You want to talk about it? You need to put your hands up.
I feel comfortable saying we're on the cutting edge of the reality-based training, which is pretty much the wave of the future.
And a necessity, Sergeant Lofton tells me after the rise of caught-on-video police confrontations from Charlotte. To an encounter in Minnesota, every moment captured on Facebook Live.
He just shot his arm off. We got pulled over on Larpener.
I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
Is this type of training more important than ever, would you say?
I would say yes, without a doubt.
With officers under a microscope, St. Pete has quadrupled training. And despite mounting criticism and racial tension, how situations are handled will not change.
Why is it always deadly force?
You have to stop the threat. And shooting for the knee or the arm, it sounds really good, but it's also an extremely small target. It's not really shoot to kill, it's shoot to stop the threat. Move up if you're going to cover.
Sergeant Lofton hopes people will remember they are the good guys.
We're the filter for America. If we didn't filter out all that bad stuff, this would be like the Wild Wild West.
Serena Fazan, ABC.
A motorcycle rider seriously hurt after a hit-and-run crash. This one happened at Iliff and Valencia around 7 o'clock this morning. Colorado State Patrol now looking for the driver involved, who is said to be driving a gold 2005 Nissan Altima. It has the license plate 705 SFE. If you see the car or have any information, give police a call.
As the Iraqi forces continue the offensive to liberate the city of Mosul from Daesh terrorists, the most successful of gains have been on the Eastern Front, where for the first time the Iraqi special forces are working shoulder to shoulder with the Kurdish Peshmerga to eradicate a common enemy.
We are coordinating well. The Peshmerga will fortify villages which were under the control of the Kurdistan regional government before Daesh invaded. And for our part, we will continue after Bartella to head toward Mosul, while the Peshmerga will provide backup if we need it.
Over 20 towns and villages have been recaptured over the past 5 days as a result of the joint operation. As part of the agreement between the army and the Kurdish forces, the Peshmerga will retain control of territories Daesh occupied from them back in 2014. In return, the Kurdish fighters will play a supporting role in the battle to liberate Mosul.
Our task is to strengthen our presence in the newly liberated territories. The operation is going really fast and according to the plans drawn up by the Joint Command. We aim to liberate the entire Eastern Front in the next few days so the residents can return. The success here wouldn't have been achieved if not for the cooperation between the Peshmerga and the Iraqi army.
2 years ago, it was the divisions and rifts that allowed Daesh to sweep across much of Iraq's west and central provinces. Now it looks like the united front shown by the Iraqi forces has proven to be the cure against the Takfiri terrorists. The coordination between the Iraqi army and the Kurdish Peshmerga forces has reached a new height following their successful joint operation against Daesh in Nainawa province. The cooperation will likely prove to be effective as the Iraqi forces edge closer towards Mosul. Ali Musawi, Press TV, Karamlis, east of Mosul.
Now we're joined by Mr. James Petros for more on the story out of New York, Middle East expert. Hello, Mr. Petros, and thanks for joining us here on the program. So now, do you think that Daesh will have trouble surviving in Iraq as a fragmented terror group once it loses Mosul? Or do you think the bigger challenge to deal with the terrorists, or pardon me, will it be a bigger challenge, I should ask, to deal with the terrorists if they operate in scattered bands?
I think it's very clear that the ISIS forces will have great difficulty surviving after they lose Mosul. They will face opposition from every direction, particularly from the south with the fighters from Iraq, their supporters from the liberation movements in around Baghdad. The problem will be the Turks and the Kurds, who are playing a role here, obviously in alliance with the United States in expanding their influence. The question is where they're going beyond Mosul. Are they thinking of occupying another part of Iraq, or are they simply adding to the anti-ISIS front? I think we have to keep in mind that the opposition is not only from ISIS, but the entry by the Turks and the Peshmerga are also a threat to the sovereignty of Iraq.
Mr. Petros, how important do you think this liberation of Mosul is for the morale of both the Iraqi people and maybe more importantly so for the Iraqi military itself for what took place 2 years ago in Mosul?
I think it's a very important morale booster. I think the fact that they were able to defeat ISIS in a decisive confrontation, these are all positive factors that should put enormous energy behind efforts to reform the government in Baghdad and to form a very national perspective rather than a sectarian perspective.
And we know that Turkey wants to forcibly intervene in this liberation effort, against Iraq's wishes. Why do you think Baghdad is so suspect of Ankara's motives when it comes to Mosul?
Well, because the Turks have indicated a desire to reconstruct a kind of mini Ottoman Empire. They have been working with the Peshmerga and the Kurds in dividing up parts of Iraq. I think they are a very dangerous entry into Iraq, and I think once they're there, it's very difficult to oust them.
Thank you for your input, sir. That's Mr. James Petros joining us out of New York. He's a Middle East expert.
The battle to retake Mosul broadens as the Islamic State group launches a spate of attacks to the east of the city. Explosions have rocked Kirkuk, an oil city under Kurdish control. A government compound and a power station were among several buildings targeted in an assault that began in the middle of the night. Islamic State group militants have taken their fight east in an apparent effort to divert the thousands of troops closing in on their stronghold. A major assault to the northeast of Mosul is still underway. The strategically important town of Bashika has been pounded by airstrikes from Peshmerga positions. The operation is being supported by the international coalition, including around 5,000 US troops.
Anytime that we engage in airstrikes in an urban area, it is very problematic. There are obviously lots of areas for the enemy to conceal themselves. There are areas where they can blend in the civilian population.
It's the fifth day of the battle to liberate Mosul. Baghdad says Kurdish Peshmerga and Iraqi forces have advanced faster than expected. In a setback, a member of the US military was killed by a roadside bomb on Thursday, marking the first American casualty in the campaign.